How's it going? Anthony Ferraro here, Create Sci-Fi. Today we're going to talk about picture lock. In sci-fi, picture lock is crucial. Now, to be clear about what I mean by that, so if you were doing like a drama or a comedy, or maybe like a horror movie, something where it's naturalistic settings, some minor special effects, or a little bit of sound design, as maybe doors opening and closing or broken glass or something like that, nothing crazy. You don't have to be too rigid about picture lock. You do want to lock picture before you start doing all the finishing work, but you know, you can change things in a couple months. You could say like, well, the scene's not working. But with science fiction, especially when it's VFX heavy, you just can't do that, right? So not like, well, you should or you shouldn't. I'm telling you, just don't do it. You have to have picture lock. And what I mean by that is, right now I'm working on a new series for the channel called Zenith Run, right? And that show, everything is on the green screen, right? So the first thing I have is all my action is going to be comped, right? There's going to be background, there's going to be spaceship, and then we're going to do exteriors of spaceships flying, right? So everything's in green. So it's a lot of work. So the reason you want to have a picture lock is that, so one of the concepts of this show for me to get it to work for, this is a no budget production and it's a demonstration of that, is that all the actors talk to each other via like a hologram, like a communication, right? So as I'm editing this, I'm doing picture in picture, right? This is very basic because I know this is going to be a hologram and this is going to be the action, right? So I'm going to have to go into After Effects, and I'll go over that, and I'm going to have to create this as a hologram. I'm going to have to impose it over this action, and then this action is going to have a background, right? So you can't just be like, okay, let's start doing that work, and then, this scene's not working. Because just to do that, you know, to do, I don't know, this is 2 minutes, that could maybe take me a solid week, right? And then, maybe that didn't work. You're like, the pace is not right. You can't undo all that. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So right now, I'm grinding it out. I'm doing the edit for pacing and for content, and it's going to be locked, right? So
watch that transmission over.
I have a multi-camera situation with this, so I'm picking my shots, and I'm also doing the groundwork for the visual effects, right?
Where the frog are you?
Oh, I am.
So here I know that this is going to be picture in picture, this is going to be a hologram, and it's going to reverse from them talking to her and then her talking to them.
I am so sorry, sir. We just got.
And it's going to go back and forth.
Traffic, and then there was an asteroid field that wasn't on the map.
I got queasy. I'm not used to this. Silence her!
Now we're back into her ship. So there's a lot going on where rhythmically it's fun to mess around with that, and you know, I'm going to edit that with music and get the pacing down. But the reason the picture has to be locked is it's all dominoes, right? So let's say this is a no budget, so I'm doing most of the things myself. But if I was working with a team, it's going to take me a long time to edit this, right? To get all the pacing down. Then I'm going to hand it off to somebody who's doing the visual effects, say. That's going to take a long time. Then you're going to give it to the person doing sound design, right? All these ships, all these blasts, they have to have a pacing. That has to be in place. And then, you know, the final mix. So all these things, if you just do them, it's going to take you like, you know, a year and a half, 2 years to do a short film. So what you can do, and what's best practices, is I'm going to picture lock this, right? So then, even though it's not finished visually, you know, I call it a radio edit, some people call it A-roll, it's locked, right? So if I have this episode locked and I hand it off to the visual effects person, to the sound design person, and to the person doing music. They can all start doing their thing based on this, and then at the end it all starts coming in and you put it together, right? So then when a month, so I lock this today. This is locked. I'm happy with this. I send it to the musician. He starts scoring to this, right? I start working visual effects. Maybe I'm doing myself, or I hand them off to somebody else. That person starts doing the visual effects. The sound design, he gets the music. None of these people are in the same room, but they're all working off of a locked picture. Is this making sense? And then what'll happen is if you all of a sudden have that all out there and you're sitting here and you're like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to cut this moment. It runs a little too long. You can't do that, right? You have to decide that before it goes out to all these different departments, right? Does that make sense? Because it's a domino effect. And then, if you think, well, I'm just cutting out, this 1 second here, but then it's going to affect the music, it's going to affect the sound design, and the whole thing falls apart. So I'm just trying to get it in your head that when you're doing your science fiction film, and it has a lot of these components, the picture locked, you have to imagine that I know what this is going to look like, so I'm editing for content, the radio edit, right? Imagine you're just hearing it. It has to be locked down, right? So let's take a look at this scene, for example.
Oh, yes. Okay, so digital codes for 3 trillion to Zygon. Okay, so
there I know that there's going to be a heads-up display. I'm going to have to do that. So maybe somebody else is doing that for me. So that's very specific to when she's pressing the air, right? When she's pretending, she's acting. So I can't just all of a sudden switch that and then some guy or woman who's been doing that hologram, probably they've been working on it for a week, that little thing that you see for 4 seconds. And then you just change that all around. That it just doesn't work, right?
Sending digital codes for 3. Okay.
And then now here,
I'm gonna hightail it over to Zygon.
I have this scene.
You sure this is the correct amount?
That's going to go back and forth, and then
Nice. Another hard.
let me find an example of that.
Let's go, Miss.
So a lot of these picture-in-picture, I need to know that this action and this action is edited for content while I'm creating these visual effect elements, right?
Baby.
I'm gonna be very.
Now, like for example, in this scene, I have 3 pieces of action going on. 4. So I have the actors in the ship. They're communicating
Come here, ladies.
to this other actor.
You read me?
Get out of there! Get to Zygon! Go!
Come on!
Trust me, no one's getting to Zygon until we deal with this situation right here and right now.
So it's always it's always tough to watch like this too, because usually I wouldn't share it at this point, but because I'm demoing the process and a no budget production, like this is also a good way to sort of wrap your head around the reality of sci-fi too. Like without all the bells and whistles, without the ships, it's a very different thing when it's just a play between actors and green screens imagining all this stuff. It's like it's a real leap of faith, especially in the performance. That's why I have such respect for actors who do good work on green screens. It's a very difficult thing to do. Right, so they're just trusting me. I'm telling them there's going to be this thing here, there's going to be that thing there. So here it is here, right? They're playing.
What? We need the drive to Zygon.
Help if you can, or get out of my way.
Oh, I am not finished with you, hard driver.
Right, so all those people were not on the same day. A couple of them never even met each other. So we're locking this all together so we can start to layer all the pieces. And that's the exciting thing to me about sci-fi. So there's one more element, right? And in this short, in this series, there's a lot of we'll cut to exteriors of spaceships and flybys, but there's also going to be a battle. So how do I handle that? And I'm going to show you. So what I do is I just do basic timing mock-ups because we're locking the picture, right? So right here, I know I'm going to want to have a spaceship flyby, right? So I have just a basic stars, right? So now I know after that, we're going to fly by, we're going to see some ships. And then I have just little Photoshop mock-ups of the ships, right? So after that, she's going to fly by.
Are you listening out there?
And then we're going to cut to his ship. Maybe we'll, for part of it, we'll be outside of his ship just because we know that he's out there in space with this woman, right? So what I'll do is I'll just do really basic keyframes, right? And this is just so I can get my timing. So, you know, it would be something like so simple as this. And then I'll use sound effects just to really get the pace, to get the picture locked, right? It's not finished, but it's locked. Right? I mean, that's very clumsy, but you get the idea. So I know that's how long I want that there.
Are you listening out there? You better come.
And then I know I'm going to cut to his ship.
Are you listening out there? You better calm yourself.
Right? So this way I know the timing. Again, that's very rough. That's very clumsy. That's not it. But just to show you what I do. So the pace, the elements, you know, where is there going to be visual effects? Is it like in the opening, the very opening? I know that even before this, I'm going to start in space, right? So I know, okay, we're gonna be in space. But then, what feels right? You know, that's what I'm going to decide now. Am I out there for 4 seconds before we get into the action? Is it maybe only 2 seconds? And then, is it just space? Or I'm going to establish where they are. I'm going to establish they're in the middle of nowhere in this spaceship. And then I'll start to mock up what's going to be going on with my establishing of the ship. You know, is it going to maybe appear? So I'll start to mess around like, oh, we're in space. Oh, hey, this ship, here comes this ship. I wonder if this is our show about to begin, right? So it would be, start to time these things out. Oh, ship. Oh, okay. And then we establish that's where these people are. You know, in this case, I'll do the VFX, but you would communicate with the VFX person. And then they know, okay, this shot, it's 4 seconds. I want to come from out of frame into frame, hold on the ship. And then that will be delivered to you by the VFX person, and then that'll fit right in that slot where you had it marked out, right? And there's a lot of balls in the air, but it's one of those things where, you know, at first it seems a little overwhelming, but you know, the big picture, that's going to work the best, right? So, I mean, this was more just like an overview, not a how to do it, but I think a lot of people don't really understand the importance of picture lock when you're creating, especially a low budget sci-fi. It's you have to look at it as a step, right? So traditionally you would just be editing and then you'd be refining that, right? So with science fiction, especially when it's visual, you know, maybe if you're doing a dystopian post-apocalypse, you don't have to adhere to this. But if you're doing a heavy VFX picture, That's really what you need to do, right? You need to lock this down like a radio play, and then you can start doling it out to the other artist or yourself, just so that you're not going back and forth, and you have to manage it, right? So it's sort of the work part of the creative process, but if you have a solid foundation, a locked picture, then you can move on and start doing the fun stuff. Well, so if there's a little lecture-y, not so much fun, but it's a very important component of the process, and I did want to touch base with you on that. And that's, you know, where I am right now with the show. I have locked every episode, but I've locked it sort of as the first pass. So I'm not going to send this out to do the VFX and the sound effects and all that until I take another pass or two and be like, okay, here's the radio play, here's the locked picture. That, you know, it's tempting to right now be like, wow, I want to go over there and start putting them in the ship, but it's just a waste of time until you have the picture locked, right? Does that make sense? Okay, well, as always, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I love to read the comments, and be sure to check out the merch shop. We got the hats, we got t-shirts. Buying something from there really helps the channel. Well, remember, I'm just here to help make sci-fi.